The tears on Cresswell Harrington's face caught the dim hospital light like diamonds. But before either of us could speak, movement flickered in the doorway. Marina stood there, watching. Her eyes tracked every tear on her husband's face, every point where Verity's hand connected with his. Calculating, storing ammunition. She didn't enter, not yet. But her presence reminded us all that this moment of reunion existed inside a war zone. More than 2 decades of grief, years of believing he was unlovable. All that time, building walls against a wound that had been inflicted to save him. All of it releasing now, flooding out of him in waves he couldn't control. Verity held his hand through it, said nothing, let him feel what he needed to feel. But I saw her glance toward the doorway, saw her register that Marina had witnessed everything. The battle lines were being drawn even as the healing began. I wasted so much time. Cress's voice came out broken, shattered. So many years hating a woman who loved me enough to destroy herself. You didn't know. I should have known. He gripped her hand tighter. Something in me always questioned it, always wondered why she looked at me like that before she said the words, like she was dying inside. She was. And I let her go. I believed the lie because believing it was easier than fighting for the truth. You were young, heartbroken, manipulated by people who should have protected you. Don't make excuses for me. His grey eyes, her eyes, blazed with self-directed fury. I had resources, investigators, the ability to find anyone anywhere, and I gave up. I chose to believe the worst about her because it hurt less than hoping. Verity had no response to that, because he was right, and wrong, and somewhere in between where most human choices lived. The monitors beside his bed beeped steadily, a mechanical heartbeat underlying the emotional storm filling the room. Outside the window, Boston's skyline glittered with indifferent beauty, millions of lives continuing, while theirs hung suspended in this moment of reckoning. Where is she now? Cress asked again. You said she was here, in the hospital. She's waiting, in a supply closet on the 4th floor. The supply closet. A broken laugh escaped him. All these years of separation, and she's hiding in a supply closet. She's afraid. Of what? Of you, of your reaction, of facing what she did. What she did was save everyone except herself. He struggled to sit up, failed, tried again. The bandages around his head shifted with the movement, a stark reminder of how close he had come to death just hours ago. I need to see her. You just had brain surgery. I don't care. Your doctors care. Your recovery. My recovery means nothing if I can't see the woman I've loved since I was 20 years old. His voice cracked again. Please, Verity, please. I need to see her. Verity, the surgeon, knew this was dangerous. The stress, the emotion, the potential for complications. She had spent years training to protect patients from exactly this kind of situation. Emotional overload compromising physical recovery. Every medical textbook, every clinical instructor, every experienced colleague had drilled into her the importance of keeping post-surgical patients calm. But Verity, the daughter, understood something deeper. Some wounds couldn't heal in hospital beds. Some recoveries required more than medicine. Some patients needed something no pharmacy could provide and no procedure could deliver. She looked at her father, this man she had only just begun to know as her father, and saw a desperation that transcended physical condition. This wasn't a patient making an unwise choice. This was a man who had spent over 2 decades carrying a wound that had never healed, finally seeing the possibility of closure. I'll get her. The supply closet felt smaller than before. I had been sitting on that overturned crate for what felt like hours, watching the door, waiting for Verity to return, wondering what was happening in room 712. Had she told him? Had he believed her? Had he asked about me? The questions circled like vultures, picking at the remains of my composure, over 2 decades of running. And now I was sitting still, waiting for judgment to find me. The fluorescent light above me flickered occasionally, casting strange shadows across the shelves of medical supplies. boxes of gauze, bottles of antiseptic, packages of gloves in various sizes, the mundane inventory of healing surrounding me while I sat broken in their midst. I thought about all the supply closets I had hidden in over the years, not literally, though there had been a few of those too, but metaphorically. The small apartments in distant cities, the jobs under names that weren't quite mine, the careful anonymity I had cultivated like a garden of shadows. All of it had led here, to this moment, to this small room filled with bandages and fear. The door opened. Verity stood in the frame. Her face was troubled, carrying something beyond the weight of our family revelation. "He wants to see you." My heart stopped, restarted, raced faster than any healthy rhythm. "He believes you?" "He believes me." She stepped inside, closed the door, lowered her voice. "I told him everything, the lighthouse, the threats, the lies, all of it. And he cried." Her voice softened, just slightly. He cried for the life he should have had, for the daughter he never knew, for the woman who loved him enough to break both their hearts. I felt my own tears threatening again. The image of Cress crying, proud, composed, controlled Cress, undid something in me that I had kept tightly wound for over 20 years. Verity, but there's something else. She cut me off. Marlena was watching, from the doorway. She saw everything, the tears, the connection, all of it. She disappeared before I could confront her. My blood chilled. The warmth of potential reunion instantly frozen by the reality of present danger. "What do you think she's doing?" "Planning. That woman doesn't retreat. She regroups." Verity met my eyes. "Whatever happens next, we need to be ready. She's not going to let this go. She has Colette's files. The threats are toothless if we stand together." Verity's voice hardened with determination. "But that means we need to move fast, tell him everything, get him on our side completely before she has time to poison the well." I couldn't speak, couldn't process. All those years of silence finally breaking, and now we were racing against another Harrington woman's schemes. What do I say to him? The truth. I don't know how. "Yes, you do." She met my eyes. Mother and daughter, liar and truth. "You've been carrying this story for over 20 years. You know every word. You've rehearsed every explanation. You've practiced every apology." She was right. How many nights had I lain awake, composing the speech I would give if I ever had the chance? How many imaginary conversations had I conducted with a Cress who existed only in my memory? How many times had I explained myself to the darkness of whatever small apartment I was living in at the time? Thousands, tens of thousands. A lifetime of rehearsal for a moment I never truly believed would come. Practicing isn't the same as saying. No, but it's a start. She reached for my hand. "And Mom, whatever she's planning, we face it together this time. No more running, no more protecting people by leaving them in the dark." Her hand was warm, strong, the hand of a surgeon, capable of incredible precision and incredible strength. The hand of my daughter, offering support I had never dared to hope for. She led me out of the supply closet, through corridors that felt like miles, past nurses and doctors who didn't know they were witnessing the end of a decades-long exile. The hospital was quiet at this hour, that strange stillness that settles over medical facilities in the deep night, when only the most critical cases demand attention and the rest of the building holds its breath. Our footsteps echoed on linoleum floors polished to a dull shine. Somewhere distant, a machine beeped. A door closed. The ordinary sounds of a place where lives hung in the balance every moment of every day. Room 712 waited at the end of the hallway. Verity stopped outside the door, squeezed my hand. "I'll be right here, watching for Marlena. If she tries anything, what if he can't forgive me? Then at least he'll know the truth. And so will you." She released my hand. "Go." I pushed open the door. He looked smaller than I remembered. The Cress I had loved at 17 was tall and strong and burning with idealistic fire. He had seemed invincible then, a golden boy who had never known true hardship, who believed that love could conquer any obstacle, who looked at me like I was something precious rather than something to be used. The man in the hospital bed was older, greyer, wounded in ways that showed on his face, even through the bandages. The lines around his eyes spoke of years of disappointment. The set of his jaw suggested defenses built through painful experience. The pallor of his skin reminded me that just hours ago he had been on an operating table with my daughter's hands inside his skull. But his eyes, those grey eyes that had haunted me for over 2 decades, they found mine the moment I entered, and everything else disappeared. Delphine, my name in his mouth. After all this time, it sounded like a prayer and a curse wrapped into one, like homecoming and exile, like everything we had lost and everything we might find. Hello, Cress. The distance between the door and his bed felt infinite. I crossed it on legs that barely functioned. He watched me approach, his face cycling through emotions too fast to track. Anger, grief, love, betrayal, wonder, each one flickering across his features like shadows cast by a flame, there and gone before I could fully register them. I stopped beside his bed, close enough to touch, too terrified to try. The machines monitoring his vital signs beeped steadily. His heart rate, I noticed, had increased since I entered the room. The surgeon's daughter in me worried about that. The woman who loved him understood it completely. You came back. His voice was hoarse, broken. After everything, you came back. I never really left. The truth spilled out before I could stop it. I watched you, every article, every photograph, every milestone of your life that I should have shared. Why didn't you tell me, any time in all those years? Why didn't you find me and tell me the truth? Your mother was still alive, her threats were still real, and I thought, my voice cracked, I thought you were better off without me, without the chaos my presence would bring. Better off? He laughed, bitter, broken. I spent 2 decades convinced I was unlovable. I married women I didn't care about. I pushed away everyone who tried to get close, because you taught me that love was a lie. That wasn't what I meant to teach you. But it's what I learned. His hand reached for mine, stopped short, like he wasn't sure he had the right to touch me anymore. Every time someone said they loved me, I heard your voice. I never loved you. Every time someone got close, I waited for the betrayal. The pain in his words cut through me like a surgeon's blade. All those years, I had focused on my own suffering, my own sacrifice, my own lonely vigil from the shadows. I had told myself that I was the one who had given everything up, that I was the one who had paid the highest price. But I had never truly considered what my lie had done to him, how it had shaped him, broken him, turned him into someone afraid to trust, afraid to love, afraid to believe that anyone could truly want him for himself. I'm sorry. The words felt pathetically inadequate. I'm sorry for all of it. The lies, the running, the decades of silence. Sorry doesn't give me back all those years with my daughter. I know. Sorry doesn't undo the nights I spent wondering what was wrong with me, why the one person who seemed real turned out to be the biggest fake of all. I wasn't fake. The love was real. It was always real. Then why? His voice broke completely. Why did you look me in the eyes and say those words? At the lighthouse, you said you never loved me. You said the baby wasn't mine. The memory of that night crashed over me. The cold wind off the water, the beam of the lighthouse sweeping across the darkness. His face, so young and so devastated, as I spoke the words that would destroy us both. Because your mother gave me a choice. I finally sat, took the chair beside his bed, let the story pour out of me like poison being drained from a wound. She showed me immigration documents that could destroy my mother. She threatened to send you to Singapore, to ruin everyone I loved, to turn our child into a weapon in a war we couldn't win. You could have told me, let me fight beside you, and watch you sacrifice everything, your inheritance, your family, your future, for a 17-year-old servant girl with nothing to offer but love. Love was enough. Love is never enough when the other side has lawyers and money and connections that reach into every corner of power. I met his eyes. Let him see the truth I had been hiding. I knew you would fight. I knew you would throw away everything to stand beside me, and I knew your mother would destroy us both. So you destroyed me instead. I set you free. The justification sounded hollow even to my own ears. I let you move on. Build a life. Find someone your mother approved of. Someone I never loved. His hand finally crossed the distance between us. Took mine. Held it with desperate strength. I never loved anyone the way I loved you. I couldn't. You were the standard, the measuring stick, and everyone else fell short. His hand was warm, familiar in a way that defied the years between us. I remembered how it had felt to hold this hand when we were young, walking along the beach, hiding in the garden, sitting together at the lighthouse watching the stars. Cress. I used to go to the lighthouse. The admission came out soft, vulnerable. Every year, on the anniversary, I would sit where we used to sit and wonder what would have happened if I had chased you, if I hadn't believed your lies, if I had trusted my heart instead of your words. My breath caught. All those years, I had visited the lighthouse too, always alone, always on the anniversary. Had we ever been there at the same time without knowing it? Had we ever sat in the same spot, separated only by hours, mourning the same loss? I'm sorry. Stop apologizing. His grip tightened. Stop apologizing and tell me something true. Tell me what you felt, what you really felt, not what you performed at the lighthouse. I looked at this man, this broken, beautiful, wounded man who had carried the same scars I carried, who had suffered in parallel while I suffered alone. I loved you. The words came out stronger than expected. From the moment you knelt beside me at the garden party and picked up broken glass with your bare hands, you saw me when no one else did. You made me believe I was worth seeing. You were. You are. And when I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified, but also hopeful, because the baby was yours, was ours, was proof that what we had was real. It was real. His eyes filled with tears. It was the most real thing in my entire life. I know. My own tears fell freely now. That's why I had to destroy it, because if I didn't, your mother would have destroyed everything, and I couldn't watch that happen. Couldn't watch you sacrifice yourself on an altar of love that your family would have desecrated. You made that choice for me. Yes, and I've regretted it every day since. Every day? Every single day. I brought his hand to my lips, kissed the knuckles that had aged while I watched from a distance. I told myself it was the right thing, the brave thing, the loving thing, but it was also cowardice, fear, my inability to face a battle I wasn't sure we could win. We might have won. We might have lost everything. We lost everything anyway. The truth of that statement hung between us. 2 decades of loss, of absence, of wondering what might have been. 2 lives lived in parallel grief, each believing the other had moved on, each secretly hoping for a reunion that seemed impossible. What happens now? I finally asked. I don't know. His thumb traced circles on my palm. The same gesture from all those years ago, like his hands remembered what his mind had forgotten. I don't know anything anymore, except that I'm tired of not knowing, tired of questions that have no answers, tired of carrying grief that should have been joy. Cress, I have a daughter. Wonder crept into his voice, displacing some of the pain. A brilliant, beautiful daughter who saved my life without knowing who I was. A daughter who has your stubbornness and my eyes and absolutely nothing of my mother's cruelty. She's amazing. She's ours. He met my eyes. Tell me we can build something from this. Tell me all those years of loss doesn't have to be the end of the story. It doesn't have to be. Then stay. The command was also a plea. Stay and help me figure out what comes next. Stay and let me know the daughter I've missed. Stay and let me love you the way I should have loved you since we were kids at the lighthouse. Your wife is going to be my ex-wife the moment my lawyers can arrange it. His voice hardened. Marina married me for my money and my name. She never loved me. She never even tried to see who I was beneath the fortune. She has Colette's files. She's already threatened Verity. Then let her threaten. The steel in his voice reminded me of the boy who had defied his mother at the garden party. I'm not 20 years old anymore. I'm not under my mother's control. I have my own resources, my own power, and absolutely no tolerance for anyone who threatens my family. Family. He had said the word deliberately, including me, including Verity, drawing a circle around the three of us. Your family will fight this. Let them all try to take from me what I've just found. His hand cupped my face. The first touch in over 2 decades. Gentle, reverent, full of everything we had lost. I'm done living the life they planned for me. Done performing for crowds who don't see me. Done pretending that money is a substitute for love. What do you want? You. The answer was immediate. Certain. I want you. I want our daughter. I want the life that was stolen from us all those years ago. That life doesn't exist anymore. Then we'll build a new one. He pulled me closer, forehead to forehead, breath mingling with breath. Stay with me, Delphine, please. Let me prove that love can survive even what we've been through. I wanted to say yes, wanted to collapse into his arms and let 2 decades of loneliness finally end. Wanted to believe that this moment could erase all the years of pain and separation and regret. But I had learned too many lessons about hope and its consequences. Cress, we're different people now. We've changed, grown, become someone the other doesn't know. Then let me know you. His hands framed my face. Let me learn who you became. Let me show you who I am beneath the billionaire and the broken relationships. Let me prove that the boy who loved you at the lighthouse is still in here somewhere. And if he's not, then we'll find out together. He smiled, the first real smile I had seen on his face in all these years. Isn't that what love is? The willingness to find out together. I had no more arguments, no more defenses, no more lies to hide behind. Okay. Okay? I'll stay. I'll let you know me. I'll let us figure out what comes next. He kissed me. After all this time, after heartbreak and betrayal and lies that were really love in disguise, he kissed me like we were 17 again, like the lighthouse was waiting, like the future was finally possible. His lips were warm and familiar and strange all at once. The kiss of a man I had known intimately and not known at all. The kiss of someone who had grown and changed and suffered, just as I had grown and changed and suffered. It wasn't the kiss we had shared as teenagers, full of innocent passion and naive hope. It was something deeper, more complex, a kiss that acknowledged all the pain between then and now, and chose connection anyway. When we finally pulled apart, both of us were crying. I missed you, he whispered. Every day, even when I didn't know I was missing you. I missed you too, every day, even when I was trying not to. He laughed softly. We wasted so much time. We did. Let's not waste any more. The door crashed open. Marina stormed in like a hurricane in designer heels, flanked not just by lawyers and family members, but by 2 men I didn't recognize. Men with press badges, cameras already raised. The peace of the moment shattered instantly, replaced by the harsh reality of Harrington family politics. Perfect timing, she announced, her voice carrying the theatrical quality of someone who had rehearsed this moment. Get all of this. The billionaire, barely out of brain surgery, being manipulated by the con artist who destroyed him all those years ago. Flashes exploded. The cameras captured everything. Cress in his hospital bed, my tear-stained face, the intimate positioning that screamed guilt to anyone looking for scandal. I felt exposed, violated. The private moment of reunion twisted into something sordid by Marlena's calculated invasion. Ma'am, one of the nurses rushed in behind them. You can't have press in here. This is a private medical facility. This is a matter of public interest. Marlena's smile was razor-sharp. A vulnerable man being exploited by a woman with a documented history of fraud and manipulation. The public deserves to know. There's no fraud here. Verity pushed through the crowd, positioning herself between the cameras and Cress's bed. And if you don't remove these reporters immediately, I'll have you arrested for violating patient privacy laws. I felt a surge of pride watching my daughter face down this woman. Verity stood tall and unflinching, her surgeon's composure transformed into a shield protecting her parents. Arrested? Marlena laughed. By whom? The hospital security I've been donating to for years. The police chief who attended our wedding yesterday? She turned to the photographers. Make sure you get the daughter too. The so-called surgeon, who conveniently appeared to save my husband's life, just as this scheme was being executed. Scheme? Verity's voice dropped to something dangerous. I saved his life, with my hands, in front of 500 witnesses. A staged emergency, a fake collapse, all designed to position you for exactly this moment. Tearful reunion, emotional manipulation, claims to the Harrington fortune. That's insane. Is it? Marlena produced a folder from her bag, the same folder from earlier, but thicker now. I have documentation showing that Delphine has followed my husband's movements for over 2 decades, that she positioned her daughter for a medical career specifically to gain access to wealthy patients, that this entire encounter was engineered. Enough. Cress's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He had pushed himself upright in the bed, despite the pain it clearly caused him. Despite the monitors starting to beep warnings, despite every medical reason he should have stayed still, the effort cost him visibly. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His hands shook as they gripped the bed rails. But his eyes were clear and hard, focused on his wife, his soon-to-be ex-wife, with an intensity that made her take an involuntary step back. Everyone out, now, except my wife. Marlena's smile widened. Finally, some sense. I knew you'd see through there. Not you. His eyes were ice. You stopped being my wife the moment you brought cameras into my hospital room, the moment you tried to destroy the only people I've ever truly loved. The color drained from Marlena's face. This wasn't the reaction she had expected. She had come prepared to play the wronged wife, to position herself as the victim of a scheming seductress. She had not prepared for outright rejection. Cress, you can't be serious. Security. He raised his voice. Hospital guards appeared in the doorway, responding to the nurse's earlier call. Remove these reporters, remove my ex-wife, remove anyone who doesn't belong in a medical facility. Ex-wife? Marlena's composure cracked, real fear flickering beneath the polish. We've been married for 1 day. You can't just... I can. I am. And I will. He looked at the reporters, who were still photographing despite the guards moving toward them. You want a story? Here's your story. My mother spent her entire life destroying anyone who threatened the Harrington image. She drove away the only woman I ever loved. She hid my daughter from me for over 2 decades. And the woman I married yesterday is trying to continue that legacy. Cress, you don't know what you're saying. The surgery, the trauma. I know exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that my mother was a monster, that the empire she built was constructed on cruelty and manipulation, and that I'm done protecting the family name, done pretending that wealth excuses evil, done living a lie. The reporters were scribbling furiously. This was better than any scandal they'd hoped to manufacture. A billionaire, fresh from brain surgery, denouncing his own family and his new bride. This was the kind of story that would dominate news cycles for weeks. Get them all out. Cress's voice was weakening, the effort of the confrontation taking its toll. Now, security moved. The reporters were escorted toward the door, still snapping photos. Harrington family members retreated, some looking horrified, others calculating how this would affect their share of the fortune. Marlena didn't go quietly. You'll regret this. She planted herself in front of Cress's bed, ignoring the security guard reaching for her arm. I have Colette's files, all of them, every secret, every scandal, every buried body. You think you can just cast me aside? I will destroy you. I will destroy them. I will burn this entire family to the ground before I let you humiliate me like this. Then burn it. Cress's voice was barely above a whisper now, exhaustion overtaking him. I don't want the family. I don't want the empire. I don't want any of it if it means losing what I just found. You're delusional, brain damaged. The courts will see that. I'll have you declared incompetent. I'll take everything. Ma'am. The security guard's hand closed on her arm. You need to leave. Now. She shook him off, fixed me with a glare that promised violence. This isn't over. She straightened her spine, gathered her dignity like armor. You think you've won? You have no idea what I'm capable of. what resources I have, what I'm willing to do. I should have been afraid. A week ago, an hour ago, I would have been terrified. Marina had power, connections, Colette's files, and the willingness to use them. But something had shifted in me. Standing beside Cress, with Verity guarding the door, I felt a strength I hadn't experienced in over 20 years. "I know exactly what you're willing to do," I said quietly. "You're willing to threaten, to manipulate, to use other people's pain as weapons." I stepped toward her, close enough to see the fear she was trying to hide. "But here's what you don't understand, Marlena. I've already lost everything. All those years ago, I walked away from the only man I ever loved to protect, the people I cherished. I have lived in poverty, in hiding, in constant fear. There is nothing you can threaten me with that I haven't already survived." Pretty words. I'm not finished. My voice hardened. "You want to go to war? Fine, but understand what you're fighting for: money you didn't earn, power you didn't build, a name you acquired through a marriage that lasted less than 24 hours. You have nothing that's actually yours, nothing except borrowed weapons from a dead woman." I saw the impact of my words land, saw Marlena's confidence waver as she realized she was facing someone who had nothing left to lose. Colette's files prove that Colette was cruel, that she manipulated and threatened and destroyed people to protect her precious family image. You want to release those files? Go ahead. Show the world what the Harrington matriarch was really like. Show them the threats she made against a 17-year-old servant girl. Show them the immigration documents she falsified to maintain leverage over my mother. Marlena's face paled. "What? Did you think Colette was honest in her methods?" I laughed. "She didn't just threaten to expose my mother's forged papers. She's the one who arranged for them to be forged in the first place. Over 20 years ago, when my mother first started working at the estate, Colette needed leverage over the staff, so she created it." That's not possible. Check the files more carefully. Check the dates. Check the signatures." I watched understanding dawn on her face. Colette manufactured evidence against everyone who worked for her: insurance policies, control mechanisms. If those files become public, they won't just destroy us. They'll reveal that the entire Harrington empire was built on blackmail and fraud. "You're lying." "I'm the first. Do you want to find out?" The silence stretched between us, Marlena's confidence crumbling as she processed the implications. "Take her out," Cress said weakly. "Now, before she does more damage to herself." Security finally succeeded in moving Marlena toward the door. She went, but her eyes never left mine. "This changes nothing," she hissed. "I still have resources, lawyers, connections." "You have 18 hours, Cress interrupted. 18 hours to sign the divorce papers my attorneys will deliver. 18 hours to accept the minimum settlement specified in our prenuptial agreement. After that, I start releasing my own documentation. Every financial record, every business dealing, every skeleton in the Harrington closet." "You wouldn't. You'd destroy your own family." "I would. I will, because my family isn't the Harringtons anymore." He looked at me, at Verity. "My family is in this room, and I will burn everything else to protect them." Marlena was finally pushed through the door. It closed behind her with a finality that felt like an ending. The room went quiet. Cress collapsed back against his pillows, the confrontation having drained whatever reserves he had left. His monitors screamed warnings. Nurses rushed in to stabilize him, but before unconsciousness claimed him, he reached for my hand. "Stay," he whispered. "Promise you'll stay." "I promise." His eyes closed. His grip went slack, but a small smile remained on his face. The battle wasn't over. Marlena would regroup. The family would scheme. The press would sensationalize. But for the first time in over 2 decades, I wasn't facing it alone. The night passed in a blur of medical checks and whispered conversations. Verity and I took turns sitting with Cress, watching his vital signs stabilize, watching the tension slowly ease from his sleeping face. When I couldn't sit any longer, I paced the small room, looking out at the city lights while my daughter caught brief moments of rest in the uncomfortable visitor's chair. "You should sleep," Verity said around 3 in the morning. Tomorrow is going to be complicated. I can't. Every time I close my eyes, I see her face. Marlena's? Your grandmother's. I turned from the window. She had the same look when she threatened me all those years ago. That absolute certainty that she would win, that conviction that money and power could crush anything in their path. But you won. You survived. Did I? I sat down heavily in the other chair. I spent over 20 years running, hiding, watching my daughter grow up without a father because I was too afraid to fight. You were 17. I was a coward. You were protecting the people you loved. Verity leaned forward. Mom, I've spent the last few hours thinking about what you did, and I realized something. You didn't run because you were weak. You ran because you understood something most people don't. What's that? That sometimes love means sacrifice, real sacrifice. Not the kind where you give up something small and expect to be praised for it. The kind where you give up everything and accept that no one might ever know. I stared at my daughter, this woman I had raised, who had somehow become wiser than me. When did you get so philosophical? Medical school, long nights studying for exams lead to a lot of deep thoughts about life and death and what matters. She smiled. Also, I had a really good example. Of what? Of what real love looks like. You never dated, Mom. Not once in all the years I was growing up. I used to think it was because you were too busy working, but now I know the truth. You never stopped loving him. I couldn't. He was. I searched for the right words. He was my one. Some people get multiple chances at love. Some people find different kinds of connection throughout their lives. But for me, there was only ever Cress. And now you have him back. Maybe. No maybes. Verity's voice was firm. You have him back. He wants you. You want him. Whatever happens with Marlena, with the family, with the business, you have each other. That's more than most people ever get. I looked at my daughter, this miracle I had created with a man I loved, this brilliant woman who had somehow saved her father's life without knowing who he was. I'm sorry, I said. For what? For lying to you, for keeping him from you. For all the years you grew up without a father because I was too afraid to tell the truth. Verity was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, crossed to where I sat, and knelt beside my chair. Mom, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to really hear it. Okay. I'm glad you lied to me. I stared at her. What? I'm glad you lied. About my father, about everything. She took my hand. Because the lies made me strong, made me independent, made me into someone who could save his life without knowing who he was. The lies hurt you. Yes, and they also protected me, from a grandmother who would have used me as a weapon, from a family that would have controlled my life, from growing up in a gilded cage instead of growing free. You grew up without a father. I grew up with a mother who loved me enough to sacrifice everything, who worked 3 jobs so I could go to medical school, who never stopped trying to give me a better life than she had. She squeezed my hand. That's worth more than any father's money. You have both now. I know. She squeezed my fingers. And I'm grateful for all of it, the lies, the truth, the long road that brought us here. We sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the steady beep of Cress's monitors. Outside, the first hints of dawn began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. What happens now? I asked. Now? Verity checked her father's vitals one more time, her movements automatic and professional. Now we wait for Marlena to make her next move, and we prepare for whatever that might be. The next 72 hours were chaos. Marlena, true to her nature, refused to accept defeat gracefully. By 8 o'clock that same morning, she had assembled her own press conference. The footage appeared on every news channel, every entertainment site, every social media platform with an appetite for scandal. She stood outside the hospital, the same hospital where Cress lay recovering, with tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. I watched from the television in Cress's room, my stomach churning as she performed for the cameras. I am the victim here. Her voice trembled with practiced vulnerability. A woman who married the man she loved, only to discover that he has been systematically manipulated by people who have been planning this moment for decades. She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. Designer, of course. Monogrammed with her new initials. Initials she would be giving up within the week if Cress had his way. My husband suffered a traumatic brain injury. He is not in his right mind. And these people, this woman who abandoned him over 20 years ago, this so-called daughter who conveniently appeared just in time to save his life, they are exploiting his vulnerability for financial gain. The cameras ate it up. By noon, Marina had released selected portions of Colette's files to the press, carefully edited, strategically chosen, documents that showed my presence near Harrington events over the years, photographs that could be interpreted as surveillance, me in the background of a charity gala 3 years ago, me passing by a Harrington-owned building in downtown Boston, me at a medical conference where Cress had been a keynote speaker. Each image, innocent on its own, became sinister when arranged to support a particular narrative. Financial records appeared showing that I had tracked Cress's career milestones, articles about his business successes that I had saved, news clippings about his marriages, his divorces, his public life. The narrative Marina constructed was elegant in its simplicity. A woman scorned, planning her revenge for 2 decades, positioning her daughter as a weapon, engineering a medical emergency, waiting for the perfect moment to strike and claim the Harrington fortune. The tabloids went wild. Servants' Revenge, the long con, screamed one headline, accompanied by side-by-side photos of me at 17, pulled from old Harrington estate records, and me now. Billionaire's secret daughter, medical hero, or master manipulator? Asked another, featuring a dramatic photo of Verity in her surgical scrubs alongside a grainy security camera image of her entering Cress's hospital room. The woman who waited, inside the elaborate scheme to steal the Harrington fortune, promised an exposé that detailed an entirely fictional version of events, complete with invented quotes from anonymous sources and wild speculation about my motives. Social media became a battlefield within hours. Hashtags emerged like wildfire, battle lines drawn in pixels and characters. Strangers choosing sides based on headlines and sound bites, building entire narratives from fragments of truth and mountains of speculation. Half the comments championed Verity as a heroic surgeon who saved a stranger's life. They pointed to her career, her reputation, the colleagues who vouched for her skill and integrity. Medical professionals who worked with her posted testimonials about her character, her dedication, her absolute commitment to patient care, above all else. Dr. Chen is one of the finest surgeons I've ever worked with, one attending physician wrote on social media. The suggestion that she would compromise patient care for personal gain is not just wrong, it's offensive to everyone who knows her. I was in that operating room, another surgical resident posted. I watched Dr. Chen fight for a patient's life with everything she had. There was no scheme, there was no manipulation. There was only a brilliant doctor doing what brilliant doctors do, saving lives. But the other half of the internet had a different story to tell. They accused Verity of orchestrating an elaborate inheritance scheme that would make any con artist proud. They dissected her medical school choices, her hospital placements, the fact that she had been at that specific charity gala where Cress collapsed. She knew he would be there, one comment read. She positioned herself to be the hero. This was planned. Imagine spending your whole life preparing to steal from some rich guy, another user wrote. That's dedication to the con. Actually, look at her record. She saved hundreds of lives, someone countered. You think she risked everything for money? That's exactly what a master manipulator would want you to think, came the response. Comment sections filled with poison. People who had never met any of us spoke with absolute certainty about our motivations, our character, our guilt or innocence. I made the mistake of reading through some of the comments that first day. Verity found me in the hospital cafeteria, staring at my phone with tears streaming down my face. Stop reading that garbage, she said, gently taking the phone from my hands. They think I'm a monster. They think you're a criminal. They think we planned this. They're strangers on the internet. They don't matter. They do matter. Public opinion matters. Marina knows that. That's why she's doing this. Verity sat down across from me. Mom, I need you to listen to me. I work in a hospital. I save lives. Every single day, I make decisions that mean the difference between life and death. Do you know what I've learned? What? That the only opinions that matter are the ones from people who actually know what they're talking about. The rest is just noise. She leaned forward. My colleagues know the truth. My patients know the truth. The people who were in that ballroom when Dad collapsed know the truth. That's what matters. But the internet is convinced that the earth is flat and that birds aren't real. The internet's opinion is worth exactly nothing. I laughed, despite myself. Birds aren't real? It's a whole thing. Don't ask. She squeezed my hand. The point is, we know the truth. Dad knows the truth, and soon everyone else will too. Through it all, Verity performed her duties at the hospital. She had patients who needed her, surgeries scheduled, lives depending on her steady hands and clear mind. I watched in awe as she compartmentalized the chaos of our personal lives and focused entirely on her work. How do you do it? I asked her one evening after she'd completed a 6-hour surgery. Do what? Function, operate, save lives while all of this is happening. She looked at me with tired eyes. Because those patients didn't ask to be part of our drama. They didn't ask for their hearts to fail or their arteries to block. They just need help. And I took an oath to provide that help, regardless of what else is happening in my life. But maintaining that professional composure grew harder with each passing day. The reporters found her eventually. They ambushed her in the parking garage after a particularly grueling shift, cameras already rolling, microphones thrust toward her exhausted face. Dr. Chen, is it true your mother has been stalking Cresswell Harrington for 20 years? Verity kept walking, keys clutched in her hand, eyes fixed on her car. No comment. Did you know who he was when you performed the emergency surgery? I knew he was a patient who needed help. That's all that mattered. What do you say to allegations that this entire thing was staged, that your mother orchestrated the collapse somehow? Verity stopped. I watched the footage later. Marina had made sure it was broadcast on every major network, and I could see the moment my daughter made a decision. The moment she chose to engage rather than retreat. She turned slowly, facing the camera directly. Her scrubs were wrinkled from hours in the operating room. Her hair was escaping its ponytail. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from too many sleepless nights. She looked exhausted. She looked human. She looked real in a way that all of Marlena's polished performance could never match. I say that a man nearly died, that his brain was bleeding, that without immediate intervention he would have been gone within minutes. Her voice was steady, clear, the voice of someone who knew exactly what she was talking about. I say that I used every skill I have to save his life, that I would have done the same for anyone, rich or poor, known or unknown, family or stranger. A breath. And I say that anyone who thinks I would risk my medical license, my reputation and my career, everything I've worked for since I was 18 years old, for money doesn't understand anything about who I am or why I became a surgeon. She walked away without another word, but the harassment continued. At the hospital, at her apartment building, everywhere she went, cameras followed. Questions ambushed her from every angle. Security at the hospital was increased. Verity's colleagues formed a protective barrier, running interference with reporters, redirecting cameras, creating safe passages for her to move through the building. This is insane, I said to Cress during one of his more lucid moments. They're treating her like a criminal. It won't last. His voice was still weak, but growing stronger each day. Once we release the real story, once the truth comes out, this will all blow over. Will it? Or will there always be people who believe we're con artists? There will always be people who believe conspiracy theories over facts. That's human nature. He reached for my hand. But the people who matter, the people who know us, they'll know the truth. I wanted to believe him, but I had spent too many years watching from the shadows to trust that truth would prevail over a well-constructed lie. 3 days after the confrontation in his hospital room, Cress was finally stable enough for extended conversation and action. The first thing he did was call his lawyers. I listened as he outlined his demands with the precision of someone who had spent his entire life navigating complex legal waters. I want divorce papers drawn up immediately. Irreconcilable differences. She gets the minimum specified in the prenuptial agreement, nothing more. Mr. Harrington, his attorney's voice came through the speakerphone, cautious and careful. I need to advise you that given your recent medical trauma, any legal decisions you make right now could be challenged in court. Let them challenge it. I've never been more clear-headed in my life. Mrs. Harrington is already building a case that you're not competent to make these decisions, that you're being manipulated. Then we'll have a competency hearing. Bring in whatever doctors you need. Do psychiatric evaluations. I'll pass every single one. His jaw set with determination. What I won't do is stay married to a woman who brought press cameras into my hospital room to photograph me at my most vulnerable. Understood, sir. I'll have the papers ready by tomorrow morning. The second thing Cress did was call a press conference of his own. Are you sure about this? I asked him for the 100th time. Once you say these things publicly, there's no taking them back. I've never been more sure of anything. He took my hand. Except you. Except our daughter. Except the fact that I'm done living lies. Verity stood on his other side. The three of us. A family that had been fractured before it could ever form. Now finally standing together. Dad, she said the word deliberately, still testing how it felt on her tongue. Still marveling at the reality of being able to say it at all. If you do this, your company's stock will collapse. The board will remove you. Everything you've built was built on a foundation of cruelty. He met her eyes. My mother's methods, my family's traditions, the entire Harrington legacy is poisoned. I'd rather lose everything and start over than continue pretending it isn't. You don't have to lose everything, Verity said. There are ways to manage the narrative, spin the story, control the damage. I'm done controlling narratives. He smiled at her. At me. I've spent my entire life managing stories, hiding truths, presenting faces to the world that had nothing to do with who I really was. That ends today. The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock that afternoon. Cress insisted on appearing in person despite his doctor's protests. They finally agreed, with the condition that he would participate via wheelchair and that medical staff would be standing by. The hospital's main conference room was packed. Reporters from every major network, journalists from newspapers and magazines, bloggers and social media personalities who had been covering the scandal from every angle. The energy in the room was electric, predatory. They smelled blood in the water, and they were circling, waiting to see which direction the feeding frenzy would go. I watched from a small room off to the side, a monitor showing me what the cameras were seeing. Verity stood with me, her hand gripping mine so tightly I could feel my bones compress. Cress was wheeled to a podium. He looked smaller in the wheelchair, more vulnerable. But when he began to speak, his voice carried the authority of someone who had spent his entire life commanding boardrooms and bending corporations to his will. The cameras went live. Cress spoke for 47 minutes. He told the world about his mother. Not the sanitized version that appeared in her authorized biography. Not the carefully constructed image of a philanthropic matriarch who had single-handedly built a business empire while raising a family. He told them the truth. About her manipulation, her threats, her systematic destruction of anyone who challenged the Harrington image. About the smiles she wore in public and the cruelty she practiced in private. About the way she had shaped him, molded him, turned him into the perfect heir, which meant the perfect accomplice. My mother, he said, looking directly into the cameras, was not the woman you thought you knew. She was calculating, ruthless, willing to destroy lives to protect the family reputation. He told them about me. About the summer of 2001, when he was 20 and I was 17, and the world had seemed full of impossible possibility. About the love that burned so bright, his mother had to extinguish it. About the threats she made, the choice she forced me to make. Delphine didn't abandon me because she was cruel or mercenary or calculated, he said, his voice breaking slightly. She left because my mother threatened to destroy her family, to have her mother deported, to turn our unborn child into a weapon in a war that would have ruined all of us. He told them about the lies I was forced to tell, about standing at that lighthouse and saying words that destroyed us both, about the choice I made at 17 to protect everyone I loved, even though it meant walking away from everything I wanted. She sacrificed herself to save me, to save our daughter, to save her family, and I was too blind, too hurt, too willing to believe the worst, to see the truth. He told them about Verity, about the daughter he never knew he had, about growing up, watching from a distance as she excelled in school, pursued medicine, became exactly the kind of person any parent would be proud of, about the cosmic coincidence, or fate, or divine intervention, depending on your beliefs, that had put her in that ballroom at exactly the right moment. "My daughter saved my life," he said, and his voice was full of wonder. "She saved my life without knowing who I was. She performed emergency brain surgery on a stranger because that's what surgeons do. That's what good people do. And the fact that the stranger turned out to be her father is not evidence of conspiracy. It's evidence of something else entirely." "What?" a reporter called out. "Evidence of what?" "Evidence that some connections transcend knowledge, that some bonds exist even when we don't know they exist, that family finds its way to family, even across decades of separation." And then he did something no one expected. He released the files. Not selected portions, carefully chosen to support a particular narrative. Not edited excerpts designed to make someone look guilty or innocent. Not curated evidence aimed at destroying a reputation. Everything. Every threat Colette had ever made. Every document she had forged. Every innocent person she had destroyed to protect her precious family name. Every manipulation, every lie, every scheme she had deployed over 4 decades of maintaining the Harrington image, including the evidence that she had manufactured the very immigration problems she later used to threaten my mother. The proof was there in black and white. Correspondence with a lawyer who specialized in creating documentation issues for foreign-born workers. Payment records showing substantial sums changing hands. Notes in Colette's own handwriting outlining how to create leverage over household staff. "My mother didn't just exploit existing vulnerabilities," Kress said to the stunned silence of the press room. "She created them. She manufactured problems and then offered solutions, solutions that always came with strings attached, with obligations, with the understanding that she owned you because she had saved you. The Harrington empire was built on blackmail," he continued, "on fraud, on the systematic destruction of anyone my mother perceived as a threat. I am releasing these documents because the public deserves to know who they've been celebrating, who they've been admiring, who they've been allowing to influence politics and policy and the lives of millions." He looked directly into the cameras. "My mother was not a philanthropist. She was a predator, and I was her willing accomplice for too many years." The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction. Cameras flashing. Reporters scrambling to process this information and get it out to their networks. But Kress held up his hand. "I'm not finished." The room quieted. "I'm also releasing documentation relating to my recent marriage to Marlena Hastings." I saw Marlena's name flash across the bottom of the screen. Saw the news anchor's eyes widen. My mother arranged that marriage. Before her death, she had identified Marlena as a suitable candidate to continue the Harrington legacy. Someone who understood the game, someone who was willing to play by the rules my mother had established. He pulled up documents on the screen behind him, correspondence between Colette and Marlena, contracts outlining expectations, financial arrangements that made it clear this was a business transaction dressed up as romance. Marlena knew exactly what she was signing up for. She agreed to produce heirs in exchange for access to the Harrington fortune. She agreed to maintain the family image in exchange for social status. She agreed to be the next Colette in exchange for power. That's why she reacted so violently when Delphine and Verity appeared. Not because she loved me and felt betrayed, but because they represented a threat to the arrangement she had made with my mother, a threat to the role she had been promised. More documents appeared. Emails, text messages, recorded phone calls where Marlena discussed strategy with Colette's former associates. "I'm not releasing these documents to destroy Marlena," Kress said. "I'm releasing them to show the truth, to demonstrate that everyone involved in my life, including my new wife, was shaped by my mother's manipulation." The fallout was immediate and devastating. Within an hour, Harrington stock had plummeted 40%. Trading was temporarily suspended. as the market struggled to process the implications. Board members began resigning in real time. I watched the news coverage as one after another, senior executives and board directors issued statements distancing themselves from Colette's methods. Some claimed ignorance. They had no idea about the matriarch's tactics. Others simply vanished, lawyers already drafting statements about their limited involvement in day-to-day operations. Family members who had benefited from Colette's methods scrambled to protect themselves. Cousins, aunts, business partners who had looked the other way for decades, all of them suddenly very interested in establishing their independence from the Harrington name. Social media, which had been so quick to condemn us, shifted almost overnight. "Holy shit, the grandmother was the villain all along," one viral tweet read. "Imagine being a 17-year-old girl threatened by one of the most powerful women in the country," another post said. "Imagine sacrificing everything to protect your family. Imagine being called a gold digger for it 20 years later." That surgeon literally saved the life of a stranger who happened to be her father, and people are calling it a scheme. The mental gymnastics required for that take are Olympic level. The tide was turning, and Marlena's case was collapsing entirely. The files revealed everything. The extent of Colette's planning. The way she had identified Marlena years before introducing her to Cress. The background checks. The psychological profiles. The careful vetting process that had gone into selecting the perfect candidate. Documents emerged showing agreements Marlena had signed, buried deep in files she had probably never fully read, or had read and chosen to ignore. Contracts specifying exactly what she would receive in exchange for producing acceptable heirs. Outlining the role she was expected to play. Defining the boundaries of her power within the family structure. There were financial projections showing what Marlena stood to gain if she successfully produced a male heir within 5 years. Bonuses for maintaining the family image. Penalties for failing to meet certain social obligations. It was all there. The entire sordid transaction laid bare. Marlena wasn't a victim of our conspiracy. She was a victim of Colette's. A pawn who had outlived her usefulness the moment real heirs appeared. A tool that had served its purpose and was now being discarded. The irony was almost too perfect. The woman who had stormed into that hospital room with cameras and accusations, who had painted herself as the wronged wife fighting against scheming outsiders, she had been played from the very beginning, just like everyone else who crossed paths with Colette Harrington. That evening, I sat with Cress in his hospital room while the news coverage played on mute. "You destroyed everything," I said softly. "Your company, your family's reputation, everything your mother built." "I destroyed a house of cards that was built on suffering," he corrected. "There's a difference. Your family will never forgive you." "Good. I don't want their forgiveness. I want their accountability." He reached for my hand. "For too long we've all hidden behind the Harrington name, used wealth as a shield against consequences, pretended that having money made us better than the people we hurt. And now we start over, build something real, something that isn't constructed on other people's pain." That's idealistic. Maybe, but I'm tired of being cynical. I spent 2 decades being cynical, and it made me miserable. I looked at this man, this billionaire who had just committed corporate suicide on live television, and felt something shift in my chest. "What are you going to do now?" "Now?" He smiled. "Now I'm going to get well. I'm going to finalize my divorce. I'm going to get to know my daughter. And I'm going to figure out how to make up for lost time with the woman I never stopped loving." In that order, more or less. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the news anchors dissect his press conference from every angle. Financial experts predicted the collapse of the Harrington empire. Legal analysts discussed the potential criminal implications of Colette's schemes. Social commentators debated the ethics of inherited wealth and the responsibilities that came with it. It was chaos, but it was honest chaos. Truth laid bare, for better or worse. "I got a call from Marlena's lawyers," Cress said eventually. "Already?" "They're fast when they're scared. She wants to settle." 1 week after the press conference, Marlena's lawyers contacted Cress with a formal settlement offer. She would sign the divorce papers without contest. She would accept the minimum prenuptial settlement, still several $1,000,000, still more than most people would see in a lifetime, but a fraction of what she had expected to receive as the Harrington wife. She would disappear from our lives completely, with a non-disclosure agreement preventing her from ever discussing the marriage or the family. In exchange, Cress would not pursue the release of additional documents specifically relating to her personal arrangement with Colette, would not publicly characterize her as a willing participant in the manipulation beyond what had already been revealed, would not paint her as a villain, merely as another casualty of his mother's schemes. Cress showed me the offer. We discussed it through the night, sitting in his hospital room while the city slept outside. "She doesn't deserve protection," I said. My voice was hard. "She threatened our daughter. She tried to destroy us. She brought cameras into your hospital room when you were at your most vulnerable. She was Colette's tool." Cress's voice was tired but thoughtful, used and manipulated just like everyone else. The difference is she went along willingly. She knew what she was signing up for. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. He rubbed his eyes, the gesture making him look older than his years. But releasing those additional documents would destroy her completely, strip away everything she has, everything she is, and I'm tired of destroying people, even people who try to destroy me first. So, we let her walk away? We let her disappear. There's a difference. He took my hand, threading our fingers together. She'll spend the rest of her life knowing what she did, knowing that we could expose her at any moment, knowing that her reputation, her carefully constructed image, exists only because we chose to show mercy. You think that's enough punishment? I think the best punishment for someone like Marina isn't destruction, it's irrelevance. He met my eyes. She wanted to matter, wanted to be the Harrington wife, the keeper of the legacy, the power behind the throne. She wanted to be the next Colette, wielding influence and fear in equal measure. He paused. Instead, she'll be a footnote, a brief marriage to a man who never loved her, a failed attempt to continue a toxic legacy, a nothing. I thought about it, about revenge versus peace, about destruction versus healing, about what kind of person I wanted to be on the other side of this nightmare. What does Verity think? I asked her this morning. A small smile crossed his face. She said, "Let the trash take itself out. We have better things to focus on." I laughed, surprised by it. That sounds exactly like her. She's incredible. Wonder filled his voice. Our daughter is absolutely incredible. Where did she get that strength? From you, from my mother, from generations of women who survived when survival seemed impossible. And from you. He squeezed my hand. From the woman who chose protection over happiness, sacrifice over comfort, love over self-interest. Don't make me sound noble. I made terrible choices. You made impossible choices. There's a difference. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing the weight of the decision we were about to make. "If we do this," I said slowly, "if we let her go quietly, we're giving up the satisfaction of watching her face consequences. Yes, we're choosing mercy over justice. Are we? Or are we choosing peace over vengeance?" He turned to face me fully. "Delphine, I've been thinking a lot about what justice actually means. For years I thought justice meant making people pay for their mistakes, making them hurt the way they hurt me. But maybe real justice is breaking the cycle, refusing to become the thing that hurt you." I looked at this man, this person who had every reason to be bitter and vengeful, choosing compassion instead. "When did you get so wise?" Brain surgery, near-death experiences really put things in perspective. The settlement was signed the next day. Marina took her minimum payment and vanished from our lives as completely as if she had never existed. The divorce was finalized within the month, expedited by lawyers on both sides who wanted this situation resolved before it could generate any more headlines. The last I heard, she had moved to Europe, some coastal town in Italy, according to the whispers that filtered back through the remaining Harrington social network. She had reinvented herself, found some other wealthy family to attach herself to, some other aging patriarch who needed a beautiful companion and didn't ask too many questions about her past. I hoped for her sake that she had learned something from this experience, that somewhere in the wreckage of her plans she had found a moment of genuine reflection, that she would choose to be something other than a predator looking for prey. But I doubted it. Some people don't change. They just find new victims, new schemes, new ways to trade beauty and manipulation for the security they couldn't build themselves. And that was fine, because Marlena was gone. The threat had passed. The battle was over, and we finally had what mattered, each other. 3 months later, the clinic opened on a Tuesday morning in September. The air was crisp with the first hints of autumn. Leaves had just started turning on the trees lining the street, gold and amber and deep red, nature's way of marking transitions. The sidewalk in front of the building was swept clean. The windows gleamed in the morning sunlight, and a simple ribbon stretched across the entrance waiting to be cut. It wasn't a Harrington clinic. Though Harrington money had funded it, the name appeared nowhere on the building. No brass plaques commemorating generous donors, no portraits of benefactors in the lobby, no reminders of the empire that had been built on cruelty and maintained through fear. It wasn't a charity clinic either. Though it served those who couldn't afford care elsewhere, it operated on a sliding scale that respected dignity. Pay what you can. Pay nothing if you have nothing. But always be treated like a human being worthy of respect and quality care. The Rosa Community Health Center. The name was painted in simple letters above the entrance. Clean, unpretentious, honoring the woman who had made it all possible, even though she never lived to see it. My mother. The woman who had torn up Colette's check all those years ago, who had said, "We don't take money for heartbreak," and meant every word, who had worked until her hands ached and her back gave out, cleaning houses for families who barely saw her, and still never lost her kindness or her dignity. She had passed away 8 years ago, never knowing that her granddaughter had become a surgeon, never knowing that the man I had loved was still alive and still searching. Never knowing that her sacrifice, raising me alone, protecting me, giving me everything she could, would lead to this moment. But somehow, I felt her presence as we stood in front of the clinic that bore her name. Felt her approval. Felt her pride. Verity cut the ribbon that morning, using surgical scissors that gleamed in the September sun. The gathered crowd applauded. Donors who had contributed after Cress's press conference revealed the truth. Community members who had been waiting years for accessible healthcare in this neighborhood, medical staff who had signed on to work at reduced salaries because they believed in the mission. Cress gave a speech from his wheelchair. He was walking now, but still tired easily. The doctors said full recovery would take another few months, maybe longer. Brain surgery wasn't something you bounced back from quickly, but his mind was sharp. His voice was strong. And when he spoke about the clinic, about what it represented, I could hear the passion that had drawn me to him all those years ago. This clinic represents a different kind of legacy, he told the assembled crowd. Not one built on power and control, but on service and healing. Not one that demands recognition, but one that offers dignity. He paused, his eyes finding mine in the crowd. My mother spent her life building monuments to herself, buildings with her name on them, foundations that existed to glorify her philanthropy, scholarships designed to associate the Harrington name with education and opportunity. But monuments aren't legacy. Legacy is what you leave in people's hearts. Legacy is the lives you touch, the kindness you show, the way you treat people when there's nothing in it for you. He gestured to the clinic behind him. This building bears the name of a woman who cleaned houses for a living, a woman who most people never noticed, a woman who had no wealth, no power, no influence. But she raised a daughter who taught that daughter about dignity and sacrifice and real love, and that daughter raised a granddaughter who saves lives every single day. That's legacy. That's what matters. Not the size of your bank account or the number of buildings with your name on them, but the impact you have on the people around you. The crowd applauded, and I felt tears streaming down my face. Then it was my turn to speak. I stepped up to the small podium they had set up, looking out at faces both familiar and strange. Verity stood to my right, Cress in his wheelchair to my left. Our small family, finally together, finally whole. My mother spent her life being invisible, I said, my voice barely steady, working in houses where no one saw her, serving families who looked through her like she was made of glass, doing back-breaking work for wages that barely covered our rent. I took a breath. She immigrated here believing in the American dream, believing that hard work and honesty would lead to a better life, and in some ways she was right. Her hard work gave me opportunities she never had. Her sacrifice gave me an education. Her love gave me the strength to survive things that should have broken me. But in other ways, the American dream failed her. She worked until her body gave out and died with barely enough money for a funeral. She never got to travel, never got to retire, never got to experience the comfort and security she deserved. I looked up at the clinic. This building can't give her back the years she lost, can't undo the injustice of a system that valued her so little, can't restore what was taken from her. But it can honor her. It can serve the people she spent her life serving, immigrants, working families, people who fall through the cracks of a healthcare system that too often treats poverty as a personal failing rather than a systemic problem. This clinic is her legacy, a place where no one is invisible, where everyone is seen, where healthcare is a right, not a privilege reserved for those who can afford it. I looked at the faces in the crowd, people who had traveled from across the city to be here, people who had been waiting years for accessible healthcare in this neighborhood, people whose stories probably weren't that different from my mother's. My mother used to say that we all have two choices in life. We can build walls or we can build bridges. We can protect what we have or we can share what we have. We can hoard our resources or we can open our hands. She chose bridges, she chose sharing, she chose open hands even when she had so little to give. That's what this clinic represents. Not charity, which implies superiority, but solidarity, recognition that we're all in this together, that your pain matters as much as anyone else's, that you deserve care and respect and dignity, regardless of your bank account or immigration status or insurance coverage. The applause was thunderous. The first patients arrived that afternoon. A mother with a sick child was first through the door. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5, her eyes too bright with fever, her cheeks too flushed. The mother clutched paperwork she couldn't fully read, immigration documents, employment records, the kind of papers my mother had carried everywhere, always afraid they weren't quite right, always worried about what would happen if someone looked too closely. She spoke broken English, her words tumbling over each other in her anxiety about cost, about whether she would be reported, about whether she would be turned away. Verity knelt down to the little girl's level first, smiling gently. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Maria," the child whispered. "Maria, that's a beautiful name. I'm Dr. Chen. Can I look at your throat? I promise it won't hurt." While Verity examined the child, I helped the mother fill out intake forms, explained the sliding scale payment system, assured her that no one would be turned away for inability to pay, that no one would be reported to immigration authorities, that this was a safe place. The relief in that mother's eyes was worth everything. An elderly man came next, untreated diabetes that had plagued him for years because he couldn't afford the medication, couldn't afford the monitoring, couldn't afford to miss work for doctor's appointments. His feet showed signs of neuropathy. His vision was deteriorating. His kidney function was compromised. All of it treatable if caught earlier. All of it progressing because healthcare had been out of reach. We set him up with a treatment plan. Free medication through a partnership with a pharmaceutical company that Cress had negotiated. Regular monitoring appointments scheduled around his work hours. A referral to an ophthalmologist who had agreed to see our patients on a sliding scale. "I can't pay much," he said, his voice shaking. "Then you pay what you can, and if that's nothing, that's okay too," he cried. Then a young woman, barely 20, too afraid of deportation to seek care anywhere else, suffering in silence with a condition that could have been easily treated months ago. She had been in pain for so long, she had almost forgotten what it felt like to live without it. Verity examined her with gentle hands and kind words, explaining each step of the examination, asking permission before every touch, treating her like a person rather than a problem to be solved. "We're going to get you feeling better," Verity promised. "And you don't have to be afraid here. We don't report anyone. We don't ask for papers. We just provide care, that's all." I helped them all that first day, and in the days that followed. Just like I had helped patients for years in clinics across the country, anonymous positions under names that weren't quite my own, always moving, always hiding, always looking over my shoulder. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't hiding, wasn't running, wasn't using a false name or maintaining a fake identity, wasn't looking over my shoulder for threats that might appear. This time, I was home, and I was using my real name, Delphine, for the first time in over 20 years. Hashtag 6 months later, the lighthouse stood unchanged against the autumn sky. The same weathered stone, the same peeling paint on the keeper's door, the same narrow stairs spiraling up to a lamp that had been restored and now functioned again, sweeping its beam across the harbour every 30 seconds. I visited every year now. On the anniversary of the night, I had stood here and destroyed everything. The night I had saved everything. The night that still shaped my dreams, though the nightmares came less frequently now. But I didn't visit alone anymore. Verity stood beside me, watching the waves crash against the rocks far below. The sound was the same, that endless rhythm of water meeting stone, neither winning, both eternal. Her white coat was folded in her car, parked in the small lot at the base of the hill. She had come straight from surgery, still riding the adrenaline of another successful operation. Another heart repaired, another life extended. "I've watched videos of this place," Verity said, her voice quiet against the wind. "Old footage from before it was decommissioned. The light used to guide ships from 20 miles away." "It was beautiful," I replied. "Watching that light cut through the darkness, knowing it was guiding people home." "Is that why you came here, that night?" "I came here because it was far enough away that no one would think to look for me, because I needed a place to say goodbye, because—" I paused, remembering. "Because this was where we fell in love, where he first told me he wanted to spend his life with me. It seemed fitting that it should also be where everything ended. But it didn't end. No, I suppose it didn't." We stood in silence for a moment, watching the waves. "Tell me about that summer again," Verity said. I had told her many times. The story never changed. The details remained constant: the garden party, the broken champagne glasses, the way he had knelt beside me and smiled like my clumsiness was charming rather than catastrophic. But she kept asking, and I kept telling. Because this was how we built our relationship, not just mother and daughter, but two people getting to know each other, filling in the gaps that 23 years of separation had created. We met at the garden party. I was 17, carrying trays of champagne through a crowd of people who didn't see me, invisible, forgettable, just another servant doing her job. And then you dropped one. An entire tray, glass everywhere, champagne soaking into a rug that probably cost more than my mother made in a year. I was frozen with horror, certain I would be fired on the spot, maybe even made to pay for the damage. And he helped you. He helped me. The memory still glowed, even after everything that had happened since. He was wearing this expensive suit, probably cost more than our rent for 6 months, and he just dropped to his knees in it and started picking up broken glass with his bare hands. He cut his palm. On a shard, bled on that expensive rug. His mother was watching from across the lawn, her face turning purple with fury, but he just smiled at me like it was nothing, like bleeding for a servant girl was the most natural thing in the world. And then he saw me, really saw me. I turned to look at my daughter. For the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw a person instead of a function, a woman instead of a servant, someone with thoughts and dreams and value beyond what I could do for them. And you fell in love. Instantly, completely, foolishly. I smiled at the memory. We were so young, so convinced that love could conquer anything, that wanting something badly enough could make it possible, that the world would bend to accommodate what we felt. Could it? The question she always asked. The question I never answered the same way twice. Today, I thought about it carefully before responding. It conquered time, I said finally. Over 20 years of separation, and we still found each other, still loved each other, still chose each other despite everything that had happened, everything that had changed. That has to count for something. It counts for everything. We stood in silence, mother and daughter, survivor and healer. Two women shaped by secrets that had finally been told, standing in the place where those secrets had been born. "I'm glad you lied to me," Verity said suddenly. I turned to stare at her. We had talked about this before, but hearing it still shocked me. "What?" "I'm glad you lied, about my father, about everything." She met my eyes, and there was no accusation there, no bitterness, only a strange, hard-won peace. Because the lies made me strong, made me independent, made me into someone who could save his life without knowing who he was. Someone who acted on instinct and skill instead of calculation or emotion. The lies hurt you. Yes, and they also protected me. Her gaze turned toward the horizon, toward the endless water. Protected me from a grandmother who would have used me as a weapon against my parents, from a family that would have controlled every aspect of my life, from growing up in a gilded cage shaped into someone's idea of what a Harrington heir should be. You grew up without a father. I grew up with a mother who loved me enough to sacrifice everything. Her voice strengthened. Who worked 3 jobs so I could go to medical school, who never dated, never remarried, never even looked at another man because she never stopped loving the one she lost. She turned to face me fully. Who protected me from dangers I didn't even know existed, who carried the weight of that secret alone for over 2 decades so I could grow up free. Her hand found mine, fingers intertwining. That's worth more than any father's money, worth more than any inheritance, worth more than the Harrington name or fortune or legacy. You have both now. I know, and I'm grateful for all of it. The lies, the truth, the long road that brought us here. She squeezed my hand. "But Mom, I need you to understand something. I don't resent the childhood I had. I don't wish it had been different, because if it had been different, I wouldn't be who I am, and I like who I am." I pulled her into a hug, this brilliant woman I had raised, and felt tears streaming down my face. "I like who you are too. I'm so proud of you." "I'm proud of you too. You survived, Mom. Against everything, against everyone. You survived and you kept going and you raised a daughter who fixes broken hearts. Literally. Literally." She laughed against my shoulder. The best kind of symbolism. The sun was setting behind us, painting the sky in colors I had seen countless times but never truly appreciated until now. Orange bleeding into pink, bleeding into purple, bleeding into the deep blue of approaching night. "Your grandmother would be proud," I said quietly. "Of you, of what you've become. She would be proud of you too." Verity pulled back to look at me. "You think she's watching, from wherever she is?" "I hope so. I hope she can see that her sacrifice wasn't wasted, that her granddaughter is changing lives, that the hardship she endured led to something beautiful." We held each other as the sun finished its descent, watching the lighthouse beam begin its nightly work. 2 women, 3 generations of strength, a legacy built not on wealth or power, but on love and sacrifice and the stubborn refusal to give up. That night, I found Cress in his study. The Harrington estate had been sold months ago. Too many ghosts haunting those hallways. Too many memories pressed into the walls like bloodstains that wouldn't wash out. Walking through rooms where Colette had issued her threats, where a young me had served champagne to people who never saw me, where plans had been made to destroy lives without a second thought. None of us could live there. So we had found something else. A modest house near the coast, purchased under my name, because Cress was in the process of legally separating himself from most of the Harrington assets. Close enough to hear the ocean on quiet nights. Far enough from the city to feel like an escape. Nothing like the mansion I had served in as a 17-year-old. No marble floors imported from Italy. No priceless art collection. No rooms that existed only to be impressive. No staff quarters where people like my mother had lived like ghosts in the machine. Just enough space for the 3 of us, with room for growth. For the future, we were finally building together. Cress was reviewing paperwork when I entered, foundation documents, clinic reports, the endless administration of turning money into meaning. His recovery had been complete, or as complete as such things ever were. Occasional headaches that came without warning. Moments of fatigue that required him to rest when he would have preferred to push through. But the man himself had emerged from the surgery and the scandal clearer than before, more focused, more certain of what mattered. He looked up when I entered, and his face transformed with the same joy it had shown all those years ago at the lighthouse. The same joy, but deeper now, enriched by loss and recovery, by separation and reunion, by all the years between then and now. "Hey! Hey, yourself!" I crossed to where he sat, settled into his lap without asking permission. His arms wrapped around me automatically, pulling me close. He smelled like coffee and paper, and the ocean air that drifted through the open window. "Good visit with Verity?" "The best." I rested my head against his shoulder. "She said she's glad I lied to her." That's unexpected, though knowing our daughter, somehow perfectly in character. "She said the lies made her strong, independent, free from your mother's control." "That's probably true." He pressed a kiss to my temple, the gesture so familiar now, after months of rebuilding what we had lost. Though I would have preferred to raise her together, to watch her grow up, to be there for her first steps and her first words and her first day of school. So would I, but we're raising her now, the rest of her life, together. Together. He said the word like a promise, like a prayer, like something sacred finally claimed. I still can't believe this is real sometimes. I wake up in the middle of the night and reach for you just to make sure you're there, that you're actually here, that this isn't some fever dream my brain conjured up on that operating table. Believe it. I turned to face him, cupping his face in my hands. "Because I'm not going anywhere, ever again." "Promise?" "Promise." I kissed him, soft at first, then deeper, full of everything we had survived, everything we had lost and found and fought for. No more running, no more lies, no more looking over my shoulder for threats that might never come. Just us, for however long we have. However long isn't enough. No, but it's what we have, and I refuse to waste another second of it. We sat in silence after that, holding each other in the small study of our modest home, watching night fall over the water through windows that needed no curtains because there was no one to hide from anymore. Somewhere in Boston, our daughter was saving another life, another surgery, another broken heart repaired by hands that had inherited their mother's compassion and their father's determination, continuing what we had started together all those years ago, a legacy not of wealth or power, but of healing and service and love. The peace of ordinary moments settled over us, the gift of normal after decades of chaos, the quiet contentment of two people who had finally found their way home to each other. No dramatic revelations waiting in the wings. No enemies gathering for another assault. No schemes or plots or manipulations. Just this. Just us. Just the ordinary miracle of love that had waited over 20 years for its chance to grow. Outside, the waves kept their eternal rhythm against the shore. Inside, two hearts beat in sync for the first time in 2 decades. And somewhere, I imagined, my mother was smiling. #1 year later. The wedding was small, just the 3 of us, plus a handful of friends who had proven their loyalty through the chaos of the past year, clinic staff who had become family, a few colleagues from the hospital who had stood by Verity when the media storm raged, the minister who had agreed to perform the ceremony in the most unconventional of locations, no Harrington relatives. The ones who hadn't been arrested for their involvement in Colette's schemes had scattered to various corners of the world, Europe, South America, remote islands where questions were few and extradition was complicated. They were busy trying to rebuild reputations that Colette had borrowed and ultimately destroyed, trying to distance themselves from a name that had become synonymous with manipulation and fraud, trying to pretend they hadn't benefited from decades of cruelty. None of them were missed. The ceremony took place at the lighthouse, full circle, return to the beginning, the transformation of a place of ending into a place of beginning. The same weathered stone that had witnessed my destruction all those years ago now witnessed my resurrection. The same rocks where I had shattered into pieces would hold me as I was finally made whole. The autumn sun cast golden light across the water, and the wind carried the salt spray up from the waves below, and everything felt sacred in a way that churches with their stained glass and marble altars never quite managed. "I should have married you here all those years ago," Cress said, holding my hands as the waves crashed below us. I should have ignored my mother, should have trusted our love instead of believing her lies, should have fought for you instead of letting you disappear. The bandages were gone now. His hair had grown back over the surgical scars. A year of recovery had restored him to something close to his former self, though he would never be quite the same. None of us would. We're here now, I replied. That's what matters. The minister smiled gently, this patient woman who had already endured our unconventional requests with grace. The vows? Cress took a breath that seemed to draw strength from the salt air itself. I vow to see you every day, not as a servant or a secret or a scandal that needs to be managed, but as the woman who taught me what love really means, what sacrifice looks like, what strength truly is. His voice strengthened with each word. I vow to protect our family, our real family, with everything I have, with every resource, every connection, every breath in my body. And I vow to spend whatever time we have left making up for the years we lost, every moment, every day, until there are no more days left to give. Then it was my turn. I felt the words rise up from somewhere deep, from the place where I had buried hope for over 20 years, only to find it still alive, still burning, still waiting. I vow to stay. No more running, no more hiding, no more choosing fear over love. My voice caught, then steadied. I vow to trust you with my truth, even when it's ugly, even when it's hard, even when every instinct tells me to protect myself by pulling away. And I vow to build with you instead of building alone, to let you carry half the weight, to believe that together is better than apart, even when the world tries to tear us down. The minister opened her mouth to continue, but Verity stepped forward. Our daughter, this miracle we had created together, this bridge between our past and our future. I vow to be the family you both deserve. Her voice rang out across the rocks, strong and clear. To remind you of what you survived when you forget, to hold you accountable when you slip into old patterns, and to love you unconditionally through everything forever. The minister raised an eyebrow, but there was warmth in her expression. That's not exactly traditional. Verity smiled, her mother's smile, her father's determination. We're not exactly traditional. We're making this up as we go. Rings were exchanged. Simple gold bands, no diamonds, no ostentation. Just symbols of commitment, warm against our skin. Vows were sealed. Promises made in the place where everything had ended all those years ago. And at the lighthouse where a 17-year-old girl had said goodbye to her future, a 40-year-old woman said hello to it instead. Something new was beginning. The reception lasted until midnight. We danced on the flat rocks near the lighthouse base, careful of the uneven surfaces, laughing when someone stumbled. Champagne flowed freely, the good kind, because Cress had insisted, though no one would have cared if it came from a box. The stars emerged one by one as the sky darkened, and someone had strung fairy lights around the lighthouse entrance, and the whole scene looked like something from a dream I hadn't dared to have. Music played from a portable speaker, a mix of songs spanning decades, everything from the classics we had danced to that stolen summer to modern hits that Verity had added to the playlist. Laughter echoed off the lighthouse walls. Stories were shared. Toasts were raised to new beginnings and hard-won happiness and the stubborn persistence of love. At some point, Verity pulled me aside, away from the celebration. I got a call today, she said, from a medical journal. Her daughter's expression was serious, thoughtful. They want to profile me, the surgeon who saved the billionaire's life and turned out to be his daughter. They're calling it the medical miracle of the decade. That's wonderful. They also want to interview you, and Dad. She studied my face carefully, watching for any sign of the old fear. They want to tell the whole story, the separation, the lies, the truth, everything that happened and why. I felt the familiar pull of protection, the instinct to hide, to manage, to control what people knew about us. Old habits died hard. What did you tell them? That I'd ask you first. Verity squeezed my hand. This is your story, Mum, more than anyone's. You lived it. You survived it. You get to decide how it's told. I looked across the rocks where Cress was dancing with one of the clinic nurses, laughing freely in a way I had never seen during those 20 years of watching from a distance. Gone was the cold businessman who had appeared in magazine profiles. Gone was the controlled mask he had worn to board meetings. This was the man I had fallen in love with at 17, finally returned to himself. I looked at my daughter, fierce, brilliant, a woman who had saved her father's life without knowing who he was, operating on pure skill and instinct and the dedication that defined her character. I looked at myself, 40 years old, finally married to the man I had loved since I was barely more than a child, finally free of the secrets that had defined my existence for more than half my life. Tell them yes, I said. Tell them everything. Everything? The lies I told, the running I did, the mistakes I made and the reasons I made them. All of it. I met her eyes. I spent over 2 decades hiding our story, protecting it, keeping it locked away like something shameful. But it's not shameful, it's ours, and it's time to let it be told. Are you sure? No. I laughed. I'm terrified, but I'm done letting fear make my decisions. I'm done hiding. I'm done running. Verity pulled me into a hug, fierce, strong, full of love that had survived every attempt to destroy it. I'm proud of you, Mom. I'm proud of us, all 3 of us, the family we were supposed to be, finally. The lighthouse beam came on as the night deepened. No one had expected it to work when we first saw this place again. The mechanism had been dormant for years, the equipment neglected by time and budget constraints. But Cress had arranged for it to be restored as a wedding gift, had brought in specialists to repair what decay had broken, had insisted that the light that had witnessed our ending should also witness our beginning. Now it swept across the harbor the same way it had for over a century, cutting through darkness, guiding lost ships home, a beacon in the night, constant and reliable and true. I stood at the window of the keeper's cottage, watching its light pierce the night. The beam rotated slowly, methodically, illuminating waves and rocks and the distant shore with each pass. I remembered a 17-year-old girl who had stood in this same spot, a girl who believed in impossible things, who thought love could conquer anything, who hadn't yet learned how cruel the world could be to people without power or money or protection. Arms wrapped around me from behind. Deep thoughts? Cress's voice was warm against my ear. Safe. Home. Remembering, I said. Everything that happened here, everything that almost was, everything that was lost, and everything that finally is. He pulled me closer, his chin resting on my shoulder as we watched the light together. 2 people separated by lies, reunited by truth. 2 halves of a love story that had taken over 2 decades to complete. No regrets? He asked softly. Millions. I turned in his arms, facing him. But I wouldn't change the ending. Not for anything. Neither would I. He kissed me. Soft and deep and full of everything we had survived. Full of the years apart and the months together. Full of pain acknowledged and joy claimed. Full of a future that finally belonged to us. And for the first time in over 2 decades, I felt completely whole. Some loves don't survive. They burn bright and beautiful, teaching you what you need to know about connection and vulnerability and trust. And then they fade, and you carry the lessons forward into the rest of your life. They shape you into someone who can love more deeply next time. Someone who understands the risk and chooses it anyway. Those loves are meant to prepare you, to strengthen you, to teach you that you can survive heartbreak and come out the other side. But some loves, the rare ones, the precious ones, find their way back, across years, across distance, across lies and secrets and all the walls we build to protect ourselves from pain. They survive everything thrown at them and emerge somehow stronger for the breaking and the healing. And when they do, they bring with them everything that was lost. Every moment of separation becomes meaningful. Every tear becomes valuable. Every year apart becomes evidence of how strong the connection truly was. My daughter saved her father's life without knowing who he was. The universe or fate or something beyond understanding brought them together at exactly the right moment. Put exactly the right surgeon in exactly the right place to perform exactly the right procedure. Some people would call that coincidence. I call it proof that some bonds exist, even when we don't know they exist. That family finds its way to family, even across decades of separation. My secret destroyed us both, and then healed us both. The lies I told to protect became the truth that set us free. The sacrifice I made at 17 became the foundation of a love that survived everything. And the truth I had been running from for over 2 decades, finally brought us home. The end. Over 2 decades of lies. One collapse at a wedding reception. A daughter who saved her father's life without knowing who he was. A villain who learned that borrowed power is no power at all. And finally, after everything, the truth that set them all free. Some families are born, connected by blood, bound by biology, following the natural order of things. Others are built from the wreckage of everything that tried to tear them apart, constructed from survival and choice, and the stubborn refusal to give up on love. The Harrington family, rebuilt, redefined, reborn, was both. Born in secret, hidden in shame, separated by cruelty, and finally rebuilt on a foundation of truth. Their story was complete. But their life together was just beginning. And that, my beautiful people, is the end of this incredible journey. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here, for caring about Delphine, Cress, and Verity, for believing that love can survive anything, even over 20 years of lies and separation. If this story touched you, I need you to do something for me. Hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment telling me what moment hit you the hardest. What lesson are you taking away? Was it the lighthouse reunion? The hospital confrontation? The moment Verity said she was glad her mother lied? I read every single one of your comments, and I want to know what resonated with you. Share this with someone who needs to believe in second chances, someone who's been through hard times and needs to know that endings can become beginnings, someone who believes that real love doesn't give up. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. Remember, the truth always finds its way home, no matter how long it takes, no matter how hard the journey. Love, real love, doesn't give up. It just waits. And when the time is right, it finds its way back. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and never stop believing in impossible things.